Welcome to the Changepreneurs Podcast. We bring conversations that spark change. As we start, a sincere gratitude to all our listeners and viewers. I'm Vanitha Senkuruchi, and co hosting this episode with me is Shrish Raj. Today's episode is special. We have our guest whose journey bridges elite academics, corporates, and personal transformation. Our guest is Sriram Kalyanaraman, and I feel, Sriram, you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Vanitha and Shrish, for inviting me for this fun conversation. And also thank you, Sati, for being the background uh, force behind this wonderful effort. I'm Sriram, and I am a father, a son, a partner, a sibling, a friend, a coach, a facilitator, a seeker, and a student. And I I live in Bangalore, where my practice covers supporting founders and CEOs of fast-growing businesses on personal transformation journeys. I also support leadership teams on similar transformation journeys, with the idea that everything begins with the self, and personal transformation sparks the transformation of the outer world. And outside of the corporate world, I love meditating. I teach meditation. I teach a course at my alma mater, IIT Madras, on happiness, habits, and success, which I'm joined in by many other facilitators. We cover close to 1,500 students every year on the campus. We're now taking the course further beyond the boundaries of Madras to IIT Kharagpur. And my hope is that in my lifetime, I will see it in at least half of India's engineering colleges, having been a graduate of one myself. And I also teach workshops on healing, personal mastery, and uh, yeah, well, this is a bit about me. I'll pause here since you asked for an introduction.
Welcome, Sriram. That's indeed a very impressive introduction, very impressive profile. What really caught me in that profile was everything begins with self. And since you are into transformation of teams, leaders, CEOs, let's talk about your own transformation first.
Yeah, this ongoing journey of life and its moment to moment transformation. Um, so, what is the most significant transformation? If I had to summarize it in one line, uh, it would be from control and desire to surrender and contentment. Ongoing work in progress. From control and desire to surrender and contentment. My first couple decades of life were invested in controlling external success, in controlling how I was perceived, uh, in controlling all the material variables of my life, my financial worth, my social status. And while some of that remains important in different occasions still, the next, I'd say the last decade plus has been about discovering if uh, it's at all possible to control anything. And uh, where I've landed by sheer grace is that this is a dance, and I've learned my part in the dance. I've learned that now the universe speaks its will through my desire. And when I really want something, it is the universe, it is grace wanting something for itself. When we said everything begins with the self, it is the self capital S, wanting something for itself through Sriram. And at the same time, sitting here in this body and mind, uh, I have now come to acknowledge that, uh, yeah, the most I can do is to set an intention and make sincere effort. And thereafter, it is thy will. And that's where the play of surrender begins for me, in my understanding. So that would be the most significant transformation. What has that meant in the outer world? Because we also said that external transformation begins with the inner. What that's meant in the outer world is that whereas I moved through the hallways of IIT and Harvard and McKinsey, wanting to get to a certain position. I remember when I graduated from IIT, I had this plan in my mind that uh, by 35, I will be in the US and the CEO of a multi-million dollar company, and I will myself be drawing a multi-million dollar salary. And within 2 years of having that plan, the fear came about in me that, oh my God, what if I get to 35 and I've achieved this, but I've actually not helped one other soul in the world other than myself? And uh, and so the shift move began towards human development, towards the social sector space, and shifting from control to surrender, from desire to contentment, has meant that at some point I called it quits on my corporate ladder journey, and I said, here's where I'm content with what I have, and here's where I wish to pursue a path that flows from my heart, which I surrender to the will of the universe. Because today, as I stand, and that's probably true for some of us on the call, and certainly for many listeners of this podcast, I don't know where my next paycheck comes from. I don't know what I earn next month, and I don't know uh, who new clients and people coming to my life. So that's the part of surrender and being content with when.
I must say that's very courageous, Sriram, as I hear you. Um, and what prompted that thought that if I could not help even one person in my journey, and which actually changed the whole course of your life? What was that particular thought, and what prompted that thought actually?
Love. Love prompted that thought. I sat for the last few nights with a closing question that Shrish, you left me with in our last conversation. When you said, we signed off the call and you said, look forward to chatting and we're going to explore so and so. And then you ended by saying, we're going to explore what has shaped you and what continues to shape you. And so over the last 2 days, unconsciously, I've been meditating on that question. And the answer that I've finally sat and have arrived at is that love has shaped me and love continues to shape me. Uh, I could not even muster the courage to say this until early this year or early last year, that actually all I want to do is offer love to the world. I don't know if I'm a coach, a good coach. I don't know if I'm a facilitator, a good facilitator. And all the labels that I began with in my introduction, I don't know if I am those labels and I'm good at them. But the one thing I do know is that I have a lot of love in my heart and I want to give that to the world. Sometimes I struggle. Sometimes the single biggest obstacle in giving that love to the world is myself. And I struggle at those times. And otherwise, love is what has shaped and therefore prompted that thought of, yes, I will get somewhere in this life, but will that be enough? Will that be a life well lived? And it was around the same time, it was around the first year or two of my employment, where for some reason on one night, I had a very vivid uh, visualization of both my own demise, physical, mortal demise in this body and form, and the demise of my parents. And it was very vivid. It lasted almost several hours into the night. And as I sat with that, as I sat with the idea that, yeah, the day is going to come when this so-called I, this so-called Sriram is going to lie on a bed and is going to be immobile and life gradually receding from the body. And in that moment, what will really matter? And at least one of the realizations I had was I'm not going to carry anything away at that time. It became clear to me that, oh, there are going to only be 4 or 5 people around my bed at that time. Hopefully, there will be hundreds outside the room, but most likely there are going to be 4 or 5 people around my bed, and therefore that the circles of chosen attachment, if I could use that phrase, became clearer to me that okay, in this lifetime, I'm choosing to have attachment with a small group of people who I will give my life for, who will give their life for me. And thereafter, it's actually the hundreds outside that room, hopefully, or even the one person outside that room, for whom this life will be lived. And I think that that visualization, that contemplation, uh, brought out the love that I have in my own heart. That oh, this is what I want my life to be about. And it's been I've always found that a useful question to guide my own compass on if I had just one more year to live, how would I live this year? If I had just one more day to live, how would I live this day? And it's very much the answer to that question being yes to being on this podcast, even as I've just become a father. Uh, because the answer to that was yes, that if I had one more day to live, would I be on the Changepreneurs podcast and lose 3 hours with my 14-day-old son? And the answer is yes. And therefore, here I am.
Um, Sriram, to me, the word contentment that you just spoke so well, that I keep thinking like a very young person, who's just out of engineering, like you mentioned, he's gonna would he kind of you teach these programs? Do you make contentment as part of the program? Because I'm sitting here and questioning that would a young graduate understand that phrase and like yourself, eyes full of dreams and going places. So how do you incorporate that into your course?
It's a great question. And so I must clarify an important thing. Uh, it was not me that brought in the idea of let's teach contentment to undergrad students. At the time that I began this course, I was standing on the shoulders of giants who had the insight that uh, the current engineering curriculum does not cut it. And there's a big missing element, which is how do I stay happy on the course, on the treadmill of life and success. So the way we chose to introduce this, and it builds somewhat on principles of coaching and facilitation, is that we actually don't have answers here. In fact, the word contentment is my own. The title of the course at IIT Madras is Happiness, Habits, and Success. And in the first class, we tell people that we're not here to give you a definition of happiness. In fact, the first inquiries that the course begins with is getting students to reflect on what is my definition of happiness? What is my definition of success? There's a lovely 2x2 exercise that we begin the first class with, where we get students to stand up. And on one axis, there's success, low to high. And on another axis, there's happiness, low to high. And we tell students that the floor is this 2x2. And then we ask everyone to stand up and we tell them on the count of three, stand at the part of this 2x2 where you think you are right now in life. And people are then moving. Some move to low success, high happiness. Some move to high success, low happiness. And some are on the low and the high. And the body speaks its truth. when you say 3, 2, 1, the mind can't say, no, what's my formula? It's too quick for that. So the body first speaks its truth. And then the student finds themselves standing at 4 on success and 6 on happiness. And then the inquiries and interactions begin. We get them to speak to fellow students who are around them, saying, hey, why did you stand here? And then the others asking, why did you stand? And then they're wondering, it's because I don't feel successful enough. And shocking as it may seem to the outer world that these top 100,000 rankers from the millions of students who write the JEE in India go into the campus and they say are not successful enough. It's their truth, it's their reality. And similarly, some are saying, I'm not happy enough. And then we begin asking students to assess or examine what their underlying belief on happiness and success is. So, are you unhappy because you have a belief, a script that says, I'm in first year, I will get a job, and then I'll get a salary, and then I'll get a promotion, and then I'll gadi bangla, and get a family, and that day I will be happy, which means that my underlying belief is that success leads to happiness. That's the underlying belief. Or is my underlying belief that uh, both of these are independent pursuits? I can do that, but I can also be happy all the time as I'm going through that. So we are really asking students to examine where they are, what their belief of happiness and success is. And people are walking out of that first class wondering, what is happiness for me? And some of them will use the word contentment. Some of them will use the word success. They'll walk out of that class and say, look, like, I don't know what these guys are smoking, but to me, that Gadi Bangla salary, etc., is happiness. Okay. And I hope this course helps me get there. And that's the promise of the course also, that in order to be a performance athlete, in order to be a corporate athlete, a professional athlete, in order to reach the echelons of professional success, you still need to cultivate a mind that is calm and relaxed and can arrive at the answer that's most beneficial fastest. So, and to do that, you still need to train your mind to be dynamic and flow easily rather than be stuck in a whirlpool of worry for 4 years because you didn't get your promotion. So, no matter what your definition of happiness, uh, to train the mind and to keep the body healthy, which end up being the core elements of that course, still become important.
Very interesting, Shriram. This is one question which I had kept for towards the last, but since we are in the flow of happiness, so I would like to ask you, what is your definition of happiness at this point of time, as of today?
In this very moment, um, happiness is the happiness of others. Goes back to something you were just saying. Sriram, don't mind me. I like making people happy. And that may mean PJs along the way, but so that's welcome. That's great. It's so in this moment, happiness is exactly this, right? Which is smiles across the screen. Uh, and I think in that moment when we all laugh, we all smile, there's this exuberant effulgence of the energy in our heart, of the life energy in our heart. What we become free of is suffering. And again, that's a vast subject, and we could go into what's the suffering that the three of us are sitting with right now. But in that moment that we all laughed, we became free of that suffering. So, in that sense, to me, happiness in this very moment is the happiness of others and the freedom of all life from suffering of any kind.
Wonderful. And in our last conversation, you mentioned something that really, stayed with me after the conversation was the traumas and the pain during the journeys of life. You call them as gift that life has given you. How did that mind shift come? People keep holding on to pain inside until it becomes dysfunctional for them, makes them dysfunctional rather than pain. And then they look for places, look for healing or for transformations. And here this man is saying pains and traumas during the journey of life, which have been gifted to me or as a gift of life. That's a profound thought.
Yeah, it is. And my prayer for myself is that I can fully imbibe the wisdom of that statement before the end of this lifetime. I am the first in the line to raise my hand and say there are times when pain is pain and it's all the other person's fault, and I'm in the right and the other person is in the wrong. um, and then again, this process of living in the mastery of life uh, is to get back on the mat and see that wisdom as quickly as possible, so that we can begin to see the gifts and lessons. I think for me, in answering your question, how did that worldview come about? By the grace of teachers. If not for that insight that someone else shared with me first, I would have gone about life a firm and righteous victim. Uh, I would have never seen that the struggles and difficulties that I went through also shaped me and shaped the strengths and the edges and sparks and peaks in me. Uh, they, as an example, I was sharing in our earlier conversation, one of my earliest life traumas was, uh, and trauma to me is essentially a shock in the nervous system that occurs for whatever reason. Uh, it, to me, there's also no causality as such that that happened. Therefore, I felt the trauma. At best, I would say that these are parallel occurrences that happened, and I happened to experience this trauma at the same time. Um, to me, one of those first traumas was being shifted out of my home city at the age of 10 and my home school at the age of 10 into a new city, a new school, a new syllabus, a new socio-economic strata that I was not at all familiar with. And at that time, I really just wanted someone to hold me by my shoulders and say, Shriram, it's okay. It's perfectly okay. You're home only. You've not left anywhere. You are wherever you always were. Whatever you had is not going to leave you. But of course, as much as my parents did their best to say this, um, I didn't receive it in that way. And I went through a difficult time seeking approval, seeking belonging, seeking respect in a new society, in a new group of peers and elders and authorities. Uh, and while that was difficult, and several years later, I would look back at that event in a workshop and say, that's where my life got messed up. And it was because of my mother and my father that my life got messed up. But as I sat with the same teachers that I referenced and their loving inquiry, their compassionate inquiry to say, is that really true? And is your life really messed up? And then I suddenly say, well, actually, you know what? Like, I went to a better school. I began studying better. I realized that marks is a way to win the respect and adoration of elders. And suddenly people will say, oh, Sriram, so sweet, you came first. And I found my strategic ways of getting what I wanted. And in the process, I sharpened the knife of my intellect. Uh, it so happened that that knife was being sharpened by trauma. And it's hard to see at that time that that is also the love of life. Sometimes life loves in strange ways. Uh, Perhaps trauma is the love language, is another love language of life uh, to shape and mold us into who we are meant to become. And that's what I would say. The kindness of teachers and their wisdom, and then my own self-reflection on, is my life really messed up? Have I really lost everything that I cared for, or are they still there? And do I have more?
Um, Shreya, that was deep. I mean, the entire conversation itself is so deep. So, last time when we spoke, again, you did mention surrender. So, just like you, I just sat down and I asked, what has surrender given me? So, and the answer that was very loud to me was, assurance. And I keep asking, like, what assurance? And the answer is once again loud, that, that everything will be taken care of, and all that happens is in the best interest of me and my loved ones. Something like that. That is what surrender has given me. So, curious, what does surrender mean for you, and what has it given you?
So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So beautiful. Surrender as assurance that everything will be okay. Uh, yeah, remembering that the hand of grace is always upon our head, and never left our side. To me, and I'm also curious what Shrish's uh, definition of surrender is. Definition being a very intellectual term, but yeah, what does the heart uh, understand surrender as? For me, it's along similar lines. It's the knowing that grace is always there, the knowing that uh, unconditional love is the truth of existence. Not for one moment did unconditional love disappear. Its source and form may vary. Uh, it may sometimes come through humans, sometimes through animals, sometimes through coincidences, or sometimes through acts of kindness, sometimes through plants, sometimes through self love. Uh, Sometimes it may be felt as God's love, or nature's love. So it may be transpersonal in that sense. But the knowing that this love is always there, and trusting that it's there. So surrender as both trust and knowing. That to me is my sharanagati. That, yeah, okay, I'm at your feet. If for one moment I was under the illusion that I'm running the show, I stand corrected. I'm at your feet.
Yeah, very interesting. So you asked me what not definition, what would I mean by surrender? So no, I don't think reached the stage where I can say that I have surrendered. But yes, one thing which I have realized a couple of years back, I don't know how it's related to this surrender part of it, is that I'm so blessed. There have been a lot of situations, a lot of tough things, traumas, pains, as you call them, during the course of life. But I've realized that how comfortable that journey was made by God for me. So what I am going with now is, I don't know whether it's surrender or not, is the thought that I'm so blessed. So that somehow connects with surrender, I wouldn't know.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. The way I
Hmm.
receive that is, uh, the first three words that you said. To me, surrender is, I don't know what it means, and then the rest. But surrender is also not knowing, and being okay with that. So it complements what I shared. But surrender is knowing. But surrender is also not knowing and being okay with not knowing. And we were
Hmm.
speaking about sitting in the state of not knowing.
Not
I can
knowing.
see
I don't
that
know.
you
I
live
don't
it.
know. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So, continuing on the same trajectory of your working with students, I also have opportunity to work with a lot of students, and like you worked on the career part of it, the trajectory of the career, which actually defines their success and happiness both for them. There's another tangent which is of great importance to especially youngsters and mid-aged people is relationships, and they don't know how to handle that. How do you help your students handle those issues of relationships?
So, in IIT, when we began happiness and life skills, there were two courses that were being offered back in 2018. Life skills was a mandatory course and continues to be a mandatory course for all first years. Almost 900 students go through the life skills course, and then there was the happiness course, which was the second. Today, IIT Madras has a bouquet of close to 9 or 10 courses that fall under the PPD vertical, which is personal and professional development. To the extent that in IIT Madras today, you can get a major in whatever engineering discipline you've chosen, and you can get a minor degree in PPD. One of the courses in PPD is called FER, which is Fostering Enriching Relationships. Fostering Enriching Relationships. So the very uh, tactical answer to your question is we deal with relationship as an entirely separate topic and course over a semester to give it the attention and depth of uh, discussion that it requires. I don't teach that course. I have wonderful colleagues who began that course and teach that course. In the happiness course, the only places we touch on relationship, the focus is um, uh, uh, the safety oxygen mask analogy, right? Which is the happiness course, which is first take care of yourself, and 9 out of 10 modules are about helping make sure that you can find inner balance. And we're peppering every class and ultimately the final class with what can you now do to spread that happiness and be in better relationships with other people. And few topics that we cover are gratitude and kindness, and uh, listening and appreciation. So few skills and few topics that we cover. But the broader theme of relationship, and often I will say that as a male youngster in college and in my early years of working, relationship basically meant finding a girlfriend or finding a partner. That's what relationship meant. I didn't even, everything else was like, professional relationships, networking. Everything else fell in the bucket of networking. And to me, relationship meant finding a better half. So, uh, in that sense, I don't help students with that. I only have my own life experiences to go by. Um, and yeah, I suppose it's a journey. Relationship in that sense is a journey. Today, I of course see that relationship is relationship with anything. At this moment, I'm in a relationship with my laptop, which is helping me connect with all of you. I'm in a relationship with all of you at this moment with myself. So we are constantly in relationship with something or the other. And my own relationship with my partner today and people that I've been close to in the past, I've come to see that, which was very, very hard for me, relationship was the antithesis of spiritual living. And spiritual living was very important for me. And getting into relationships felt like this is going in the opposite direction. And where I am now is to realize that, oh, like relationship is also one way by which man advances, by which the human being evolves. It's a beautiful mirror that the universe holds up at all times to show you all the edges and curves and beauties and uglies in yourself, so that you can choose what to do with that ultimately. So it's a beautiful mirror, and that's how I have come to see it now. Yeah, I'll pause there.
Shriram, so this is all we spoke about is about students, and I know that you run programs for the CEOs and CFOs and all the C-suite. So just curious, what programs do you offer uh, to the C-suite?
So typically, what uh, people reach out to me for are to support with the facilitation of offsites, retreats, and workshops and forums where uh, typically, at least in the Bangalore ecosystem of startups and fast growing companies. And I see that also with my wife, who the two of us co founded a company in the consumer space last year in personal care and beauty, which is basically all her. I'm a paper co founder. Uh, but I'm seeing that also in our journey now as entrepreneurs, that the first couple of years is just doing and building. There's no time to breathe and talk about what's the big picture, what are we solving for the world, what is our purpose in life. And most teams go through that without even asking that question once. We, the two of us, as husband and wife, and as co-founders, and I'm an investor in that company. So we wear various hats, and we do take that step back and ask those questions. Most teams don't have the time to do that, and the idea of inviting a facilitator in to an offsite or a retreat or a workshop is to have an objective third person in the room who isn't part of your drama and hasn't heard the same stories again and again and dismissed them as stories and is sitting in judgment about certain things. And usually the needs that teams or founders come to me for those workshops are, uh, hey, it's been several years that we've taken some time off. We are going away to this place for 2, 3 days. Will you join us there and help us step back from the daily grind and assess where we are on what we started out to build? Uh, Help us have really honest conversations, no BSing, really honest conversations on what's working, what's not working. I discovered it was an aha for me that truth speaking is such a big benefit and gift to teams, because most often we've almost resigned ourselves from saying, yeah, क्या होगा इससे? Why bother? In some cultures, the person who raises their hand and declares an issue is the person who gets loaded with more work to solve that issue. So then nobody even wants to raise. They say, Array, if I flag the issue, I'm only going to get the work back. I'm going to be asked questions. So truth speaking slowly dies a slow, natural, and silent death. And after a point, the only voices in the room are the loudest voices or the most senior voices. So that's another big uh, theme in these workshops, which is have honest conversations and create a space where people can relearn to speak their truth. As a process, unpack team dynamics. There's often some politics because of not addressing tensions, and unspoken, unaddressed tensions start to escalate until they become dysfunctions in the way people work with each other. So, helping unwind and loosen those dysfunctions just enough that the team can start to breathe again. I see it very much as the loosening of a tight muscle in the body. Um, a dynamic or politics or tension is a tight muscle in the body of the organization, and no attention is being paid to it. And you will notice even in the human body, when the mind places its attention on a part of the body, that part starts to breathe again, it starts to loosen and relax. And what's important is just holding the attention there. And that's part of what meditation trains the seeker to do, which is just hold the attention. Otherwise, for the beginner, even to hold the attention, you keep your thing there and then the mind wanders away. So first cultivate the skill of holding attention, then choose the object that you want to hold the attention on. And for teams, it would be holding the attention on the tension, which is hardest to hold the attention on because most people want to avoid and run in the other direction. And that's what a facilitator can help with. And as the tension starts to breathe, the life intelligence of the organization starts to speak its truth through different people. And the issue ultimately resolves itself. So that's another. And finally, when all of this is done, when the body, be it individual or collective, is free from its own pain, it can start to breathe and then bring its presence and its power and its true potential, uh, its true purpose, its true destiny into into the fore. And that's what happens in a team also. Once a lot of the unpacking has happened, the team is now able to look further ahead and say, wow, like we are a team that's forged with so many strengths, and here's what we can do, here's more that we can do, and here's the moon that we can reach if we work together and if we do all the right things. So that's the last part of helping teams envision and imagine what that future can hold for an organization and for the team. So several topics, but in essence, they would boil down to how do we take a break and step back? How do we breathe together? How do we address the right issues with honesty? And how do we get up on a 30,000-foot balcony and look at the next horizon for what we are building together?
And that must be some experience. And these are usually done on retreats or at the campus itself, the organization campus.
Always offsite, because
Always
that's
offsite.
half quarter of the work is done by getting people out of the office. The next quarter is done when we tell them to switch off their phones and not use their phones. The third quarter is done when we make sure that forums are overnight and not just day. Because as much as we think that the work is happening in waking reality through talking and the conscious mind, the unconscious is also processing, and that happens in sleep. So, as far as possible, unless there are impossible constraints, I mandate that it's at least one night and ideally 2 nights at minimum, because then sleep does three-fourths of the or one-fourth of the work. And then the last quarter is the team and the camaraderie and the right food and the right environment. Yeah.
With a lot of CEOs, CXOs, what are the topics they bring up for honest conversations for their own transformation?
Three that come to the fore right away are awareness, relationship, and purpose and potential. I can speak about each of these. Maybe I'll go in the reverse order. Um, most CEOs and founders are, first of all, self-aware to a good degree. It takes that minimum self-awareness for most people. Uh, and they are aware of how much potential they have. And they're always aware of how much is not being realized, how much is not being fulfilled. And that's one big conversational topic, which is to say that, hey, like on the outside, I'm winning awards, I'm being called to conferences and whatnot, and investors laud me, and the world thinks I'm successful, but actually, I don't think I've scratched the surface. So, how do I create my next moon and set my next summits? How do I even become aware of what that potential is? So, that's one big theme. The second is, and it's related to that, which is purpose, is hey, I had a brainwave 10 years ago or 7 years ago or 5 years ago, and I started this company, and we've really exploded and we're doing really well. But I feel like the core fuel that created all this magic has whittled. I feel like that magic is not there inside me right now. And I'm not seeing the same meaning and purpose in this journey as I was seeing back then. So help me rediscover that meaning, that magic, that purpose. Help me rediscover that oomph and that uh, uh, that fizz in my journey. That's the second. The third is relationship. I think all great leaders have realized very quickly that um, to to go fast, go alone; to go far, go together. It only happens as a team. It only happens through people. And while people bring the possibility of scale, they also bring the uh, difficulty of drama. And how do I work through the dramas of my team, myself, my co-founders? And that's a big part. Invariably, that's what people come in with. And then as the tensions begin to breathe, all the other things begin to emerge. But relationships are a big theme. Another aspect is just a safe space to speak what I can't speak anywhere else. I can't tell my investors that I have no clue how we are going to get there. I can't especially tell my investors that I'm kind of done with this company. I'm thinking of starting another company, but how do I do that now? I can't tell my investors that. I certainly can't tell my team who I promised the moon when I pulled them from senior roles in other well paying organizations. I can't go tell them that, uh, honestly, I'm hoping you will get me there. And you're hoping I will get you there. But I don't, going back to our not knowing, I don't know. I don't know the answer. And I was really hoping that you will be the answer. Now you've become the problem and I have to figure out what to do next. So, where do I go say all of this? And finally, where do I tell? I can't go back home and tell my partner because maybe 1/5 of the time my partner runs their own business. 3/5 of the time my partner has their own challenges. And the remaining 1/5 of the time, my partner doesn't want all that. They want me. They want me. They married me. They didn't marry my dramas, right? So, uh, where do I go? I can't go to my partner, and I certainly can't go to my partner and tell them that they are not being supportive to me on my journey. I can't go tell them that as much as I am not giving you my time, my presence, my attention in all the important life stages, can I tell you that you're not meeting a need of mine? No way. Where will I go tell that? So there is another aspect people come into these conversations, which is just a safe space to express. And finally, there is awareness. I think it's a term I'll use for all spiritual seeking. There are some leaders have who've realized that all they need to work on is being aware, nothing else. Everything else happens on its own. The only the only ask of me is to stay present and be aware. And first of all, how do I do that? And once I'm able to do that, how do I expand the field of that awareness? How do I go to the next edge of my own spiritual advancement? And that's, I'd say, a fraction of people who also come in with that as a seeking. Fascinating. I mean, you mentioned that this is a world that I ran away from in our last conversation. Uh, when I left McKinsey a year and a half into first joining there, I wanted to be as far away from this world as possible. I wondered to myself, big deal, hard mein jaye, right? Like, who cares about these people? First of all, on the outside to a 22-year-old, they all seem to just be making money for themselves. That was one big lens and judgment that I was looking at them with. Another was, honestly, I couldn't care whether you sold 4 more toothpastes or not. I couldn't, like, that doesn't inspire me at all. And that was another lens that I was holding it with. But as I have moved deeper and deeper into this work, and I've learned to let go of my judgments, and I've learned to look at the pains that they come from. And my tensions have started to breathe. I've become present to the humanity in every layer, and I've become present to the divinity in that humanity. There's uh, selling four toothpaste could mean the next wage for the next person. It's impossible to say. In Bangalore, I went to a Shiva temple recently. Beautiful, huge temple. There's also a wedding hall that's there, and massive premise, very well maintained. And then I looked at a plaque, old plaque with newspaper cuttings from the 60s. And I looked closely, and it was the story of the founder who built that premise, that temple, and that wedding hall with his wealth. And turns out that this man was the first liquor baron of Bangalore. And when I read that, I was with my parents and I said, Ma, look, an alcohol seller built this Shiva temple. And just to, stoke her and see what she will say. And I still remember that, because I remembered from that day, it was my lesson that don't judge how a person makes their money, because you never know where the universe is going to take that money next, in whose service that money is going towards. Yeah, so here I am.
That's profound. That's the last line is like really learning. Don't judge the way a person makes a money, because you don't know where that money is going to. The universe is going to take that money to. So I have a question which has two parts. Now, Sriram, sorry, Vanitha, I'm cutting in, but so when the CEOs and the CFOs who are so aware of everything come and say, "I don't know, help me, I don't know what to do," how do you help this? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. I really wish I knew. It would free me of the about 8% anxiety that I go into my coaching sessions. uh, it, I think a few things that come, and there's no formula. That's the beauty to chaos. There's no formula to chaos. No formula. But the things that I have learned and enjoyed witnessing in those moments of not knowing are, one, to do exactly this, which is to say, I don't know myself, which required so much of self work to say that statement that I don't know. Because society expects us to know. Society expects us not only to know, but to have the answer and to be right about it, and to unwind all that conditioning and acknowledge the deep fear of not knowing that the child in me and the child in all of us sits with when we are born, and when we uh, move through the waters of life on earth, and we sit with that fear. It starts to become okay. Not knowing starts to not be as bad as it looked on the surface. It starts to become a shared human phenomenon, uh, and it starts to become not the end of knowing or the end of existence. It starts to become the birthplace for the emergent future. And for us, for that birthing to begin, the labor of moving through the difficult emotions that are associated with not knowing, that's the labor that individual consciousness has to travel through. What are those difficult emotions? They are the fear. In my case, it was the fear. For some of these people, it's the guilt of not knowing that, oh man, like all these people put their money on me, and I feel so guilty that I'm not able to measure up to the mark. Sometimes it's the emotion of shame. So to move from that statement of I don't know to the next terrain, which is the emotional terrain, uh, and unpack what those emotions are. Emotion is, as many of us are taught in these disciplines of coaching and facilitation, emotion is energy in motion. And so to sit with that current of energy in motion and to breathe together with the person, that brings us into the terrain below, the terrain that sits below beliefs, concepts, scripts, programs, conditionings of the world that are inherited implicitly or explicitly, the terrain that sits underneath all of that, the terrain of silence and presence, as you called it. And then from that presence and silence, the shared intelligence of life will speak through either person. Uh, Either the coach or the coachee will speak through one or the other. Sometimes it will not speak, and that will also be okay. But I've found that that's what's been helpful. And the other thing I'll say, which as a coach was a real eye opener for me, as an individual was an eye opener for me, is working with the body and helping a person become present to what's happening in their body when they are saying, I don't know. That I found to be so powerful. And what I found to be least powerful, most momentarily satisfying, but later on not truly fulfilling, is to tell them what I think the answer is. Uh, and somehow that's felt like throwing darts at a dartboard, and maybe 1 out of 100 hits, but otherwise you're left with the shoulder pain of throwing 99. So, yeah, I'll pause there.
Amazing. The second part of the question is, who does Shriram go to when he has to unload and unwind?
Mm. Before I answer that, you tell me how do you deal with not knowing, since we are on the topic when
By
someone.
just not knowing.
Yeah.
By just not knowing. I don't know. I'm very comfortable with I don't know. In fact, in most of the coaching conversations that I have, and the person says, I don't know, and said, I also say, I don't know. And that's what my teacher told me. I don't know. And let's sit together with I don't know, and let's see where we go, what we come to know.
Love you. Anita, how about you? What's your.
Um, I think for me it is. I'm more about curiosity. So to me it is. I start with what do we know. So it's not about I don't know. Yes, I don't know, but what do I know? So I start from there, and I always go back to introspection and curiosity, and somehow to me, uh, I mean, I think I haven't come to that stage where I just sit with I don't know. To me, I always try and find out something. See, maybe in the session I don't know, yes, but later I do introspect. I try to find out what didn't I know, what could have, what maybe I could have known, or what do I know for sure. So these are the questions that linger. To me, when I say I don't know, it actually takes me back into lots of thoughtfulness, lot of questions that arise from that, saying uh, how do how do I go about from here, and what do I know, what could I have known, or something on those lines.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
And I'm still waiting for the answer, Sriram.
Yeah. Who does Sriram go to? to unwind. And so to to unwind, which is to just relax, I I go home. I go home to my family. I go to mat, the mat where I meditate on, where I do my movement work on. I go to the book where I write and journal. That's often helped me a lot. Or I go to any book. I, to me, books are they're very holy and precious. Uh, they they are knowledge that's ever present to support anyone who is in need of help. So sometimes when I don't have a clue on what to do next, I'll just stand in front of a bookshelf or a set of books and I'll wait for one of the books to call me. And then I'll move towards that book and then I'll open a page in the full faith and trust that that page is what I'm meant to read and that's going to lead me to the next part. So books, and be it either to write in or to read out of. Uh, and and then to the places that I don't go as often and want to go to more often are uh, the presence of grace, the presence of grace, and being able to redirect and orient my attention to the presence of grace. Not have to go walk to a book or walk to a mat or do an action, but just in that very moment and again and again and again and again to practice that muscle of dropping back into the womb of the universe. So, yeah, those are a few of my quote unquote go tos. And last but not certainly not least is the couch that I watch Netflix on.
Hilarious. Coming, I mean, on a lighter side, have you ever been like kind of, in this situation wherein maybe a CEO or CFO, someone, just told you that, hey, you know, you have no clue, or uh, just rejected you, or said he couldn't work with you because you didn't know any funny episodes around that, or when you're actually, you know, questioned, when you're the way I'm coming from is, I know, I at least know who Sriram is. But what if someone who doesn't know Sriram and interacts and thinks that Sriram is going to answer all of their questions, he's going to give answers to their issues, and finds out it's not going to be? So, have you been just rejected, or, in better words, refused work because of something that came up? Any interesting stories around that?
I think two sets of stories come up. One is that um, even when the quote unquote chemistry conversation is happening, where people are getting to know each other, um, if my intuition is guiding me towards sensing that this person needs a different kind of coach, this person needs a coach who can actually tell them, this is the answer. Just go do this for 1 month and then I'll see you 1 month later. Then I actually tell them that, hey, like the kind of coach I am is not that kind. And I'm not going to be, I'm not uh, responsible for you doing the work. You are. I'm not responsible for giving you the answer. You are. And in doing that, what I've noticed is a self selection happens. So then people understand that, oh, okay, like I think there's another kind of coach that I'm meant to work with. And all the rejections and refusals that you speak of are the people who never came back after that conversation. Um, the second is more recently, um, one of the challenges, which was a real difficult experience for me as a coach, was when I misnavigated myself into, I won't say misnavigated, when I chose to become the knower and the answer giver and the process setter, is when actually the client came back and said, hey, like, uh, can we go back to the conversation we had on the role that you will be playing as a coach? Because you actually clearly said that you're not going to play a certain role. And for it was a very complex multi-stakeholder situation. And I think out of fear of failing, I fell back to the consultant in me. Uh, and the consultant in me is very good at working with many stakeholders and setting a process and being the one. And it was actually one of the clients who called out and said, hey, like, pause. Aren't you supposed to be the coach here and not the consultant? What's going on? He didn't use those words, but when he described it, I realized, oh, that's what I had done. And I was immensely grateful. I couldn't my mind couldn't rest for 24 hours. But then I saw the wisdom and the gift in the trauma of that communication I received, that, oh, wow, like, how beautiful. Like, he's just reminded me that it's okay to be afraid of failing. It's okay to put my hand up in a multi-stakeholder complex environment also, not just one-on-one, and say, guys, like, this is not my cup of tea. I'm as at sea here as you all are. So that was a difficult experience. And the last one, the last story that came to mind, which really uh, caught me off guard, was I was connected to a very, very senior and prolific and celebrated entrepreneur in the Indian ecosystem, through someone, and I was having a conversation with this person for something else. And through the interaction, this person, as all good leaders, have sensed that this boy has potential for something else, which is totally unrelated to what we are talking. So he said, listen, find half an hour with me later, because I'm smelling an opportunity here, but even I don't know what it is. So just find half an hour. Now, this person is so hard to find time with that it took another 4 months for me to get that half hour. And then I showed up for that half hour and I said, hi. And this person said, hi. And he said, so what's this call about? I said, I don't know. You asked me to find half an hour because you smelled something. He was like, no, I'd forgotten what I smelled because that was 4 months back and 4 universes have passed in my life. So then we said, okay, let's just chat for 30 minutes. And then he realized, okay, like, this is a guy, he's been through all this and he's now doing coaching, and wow, what an interesting journey. And he says he's a coach now. I actually have several companies and, oh, maybe I can use him in the ABC. It was all running in his mind. I could tell that towards the middle of the call. And then he paused and he looked in my eye on Zoom and he said, Sriram, I'm going to be blunt, but can I ask you a question? I said, yeah, sure. He said, you're telling me you're a coach and IIT, how all this. Are you good? Are you good at what you do? Because honestly, I have no way of telling. Like, you say you're a coach and you have a lot of street credentials and all that, but are you good? And then he kept quiet. And then I wondered, oh man, like, how does one say whether one is good or not? And yeah, that caught me by surprise. And do I do I do I speak from a place of knowing that I am so and so and I've done all of this, or do I speak from a place of not knowing and say, you know what, like, how will I know if I'm good or not? Like, so yeah, that's another story that happened. Finally, what I chose to respond with was, uh, I told him, I don't know. I don't know if I'm good or not. And I have no idea. But what I can tell you is what I have heard from people. And I told him both the good and the bad that I've heard from people, which was basically all that I just said. And I don't know what he got, but we ended up working for several years after that together on multiple projects.
Ah, the last one was the best one, I would say, the best experience. Okay. So, Shriram, you've given us a lot of time. It's a wonderful conversation, but we have to keep in mind the time which is going. So, before we end this conversation, if Vanitha, you don't have any other question, I have one last question to ask Shriram is, if you were to ever write a book on your life, what would the title be? And mind you, I don't know, it's off the shelf. I've already booked that. I've got my patent on I don't know. So you can't go with I don't know.
Lovely, lovely. It's funny you asked that. Over the last 48 hours, a title that's been popping up is Freedom in Truth. Freedom in Truth. Uh, Maybe that will be one. I don't know.
I'm going to charge you next time when you say I don't know. I've got my patent on I don't know.
On saying I don't know, or publishing a book with that title.
So publishing at the moment. Saying I don't have any title rights.
If you charge me for saying I don't know, I will be bankrupt in the next 4 days.
And I'll be a rich man. So thank you, Shriram, for this lovely, honest, heartfelt conversation. It indeed was very enriching for us, for both of us, and I'm sure for our listeners also, which is like surrender is what I really got from the conversation. And obviously the I don't know part of it and just going with the flow. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you. Thanks to both of you, to Satish, to the team behind Changepreneurs for this labor of love that each of you put out and invest your time and energy in. And thanks to all the listeners who are on this journey with all of us. Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask uh, as a request that as we end this, that we all share silence for a minute or two. Just sit in silence together. It'd be wonderful to share that with all of you.